The secret Sussex reunion behind closed doors.
We know that Meghan was meant to be here.
47 minutes. That is how long the king reportedly spent with his son and daughter-in-law at Highgrove before the cars went back down the drive. No photograph came out of it, no statement, no agreement on security, on a roll, on anything.
Lying to the media to blackmail Harry's father and Ravik into giving him the security that he wants.
Tom Bower says that Emptiness was not an accident, and that the people reading it as a family reunion have the whole thing backwards. He has a theory about what those 47 minutes were actually for, and a warning for King Charles that follows from it. So, what does Bower believe was really decided inside that room? 47 minutes and nothing to show. Start with what is actually reported, because it is thinner than the coverage around it. The Sussexes traveled to the United Kingdom. A meeting with the king took place at Highgrove. Queen Camilla was present. No official photograph was released, and no palace readout described what was discussed. The Duchess and the children returned to California ahead of the Duke, who stayed on for work connected to the Invictus Games. Everything past that line is interpretation, and Bower is the loudest interpreter in the field. He is not a neutral chronicler of this couple and has never claimed to be. He wrote a critical biography of the Duchess. He has followed the household's finances for years, and he speaks about them with the confidence of a man who believes the ending was written long before the cars pulled up the drive. His central claim is that the brevity was the content. A meeting that runs under an hour and produces no image, in his reading, was built to produce no image. That is a claim about intention, and intention is the hardest thing to prove about anyone. What is not interpretation is the silence that followed, and silence after a reunion both sides had reason to publicize is unusual. The question is who that silence served, why they got on the plane. Bower's answer starts several thousand miles away, in California, with money. His argument is that the Sussexes arrived in Britain from weakness rather than strength. In interviews, he has pointed to a shortage of major projects, the winding down of high-profile production arrangements, and the ordinary grinding cost of private security, mortgages, and staff on a household with no institutional funding behind it. He has said he believes the couple can see the end of the road within 5 years, and that they have, in his phrase, a real financial problem. He describes the situation as a crisis entirely of their own making, and says they are more desperate than ever. None of that comes from audited accounts. Bower has not seen their books. The Sussexes have not opened them to him or to anyone else, and their commercial record has been publicly reported as mixed rather than uniformly failed. This is his reading, not a ledger. The observation underneath it is less exotic. Royal association is a commercial asset. Titles carry weight, palaces carry backdrops, proximity to the monarchy converts into attention, and attention converts into contracts. Bower's point is that the couple walked away from the institution while keeping the titles, and that titles alone depreciate without the institution standing behind them. There is a detail in his framing worth pausing on, because it explains why he treats this trip differently from earlier visits. The previous returns were built around fixed events with fixed exits: a funeral, a jubilee, a coronation service. Each had a defined role, a defined seat, and a defined moment to leave. This one had none of that architecture. It was a private visit with no ceremony around it, which meant the outcome depended entirely on what the king chose to give in a room with no cameras in it. If that is right, a trip home was not sentimental, it was strategic, and a strategic trip needs a reason that does not look like asking. The door marked Invictus. The Invictus Games provided one. Bower has laid out the sequence plainly. The games are due to take place in Birmingham, with preparatory events ahead of the main competition, and the Duke's involvement with the tournament is genuine, long-standing, and by a distance the most durable achievement of his public life. That alone gives him a professional reason to be in Britain that nobody can reasonably object to. Bower's reading is that the Duke was determined to come, that he wanted the Duchess with him if it could be arranged, and that the real hope underneath the fixture list was to work his way back towards some kind of standing. He has also said he suspected the king might be slightly sympathetic, which is a revealing phrase, because sympathy is precisely the pressure point Bower believes the palace had already identified. Two things are being merged there, and they should be separated. Attending a competition you founded is documented. lobbying for a royal role is inferred. Bower moves between them in a single breath. Then came the invitation and the withdrawal. Reports indicated that accommodation at Buckingham Palace was offered, that it was not immediately accepted, and that the offer was later withdrawn. A spokesperson for the Duke confirmed the withdrawal on the day he was traveling to Britain. If you want the part where a spokesperson had to confirm, mid-journey, that a palace door had closed behind a prince before he landed, subscribe now, because that reversal is where Bower says the king's strategy first became visible. Bower's interpretation is that the hesitation cost him. An open door held open too long stops being an open door. The palace has never explained the reversal, and ordinary explanations exist. Buckingham Palace has been under an extended program of works. Accommodation is finite. A late arrangement is easily overtaken by a practical one. But timing shapes perception whatever the cause, and the confirmation landed while he was in the air. The story of the visit therefore opened with a closed door, before a single word had been exchanged with his father. Which raises a harder question. If the king was willing to withdraw a bed, why grant a meeting at all? The meeting, the king could not cancel, because canceling was the one move unavailable to him. Bower's account runs like this. Charles had watched the pattern and concluded that the couple were attempting to reverse the effects of their departure and re-enter the royal circle, because the credibility and commercial value they once carried came from that association. But a cancelled meeting between a father and a son does not read as strategy. It reads as a king refusing to see his own child. And that headline writes itself in 6 words and runs for a week. There was a second exposure, and Bower puts it on the record directly. A total refusal would have handed the Duke a narrative ready-made, that his father had left him out in the cold, that his security had gone unprotected again, that his children were unwelcome in the country of their name. Every one of those lines has been spoken in public before. Refusal would have supplied the evidence for all of them. So, the meeting went ahead, and it went ahead under conditions. Private, short, managed, nothing released afterwards. Highgrove itself is part of the calculation. It is not a palace, and it does not function like one. It is Charles's own house, the garden he has spent 5 decades building, the place he goes to be a man rather than an institution. There are no press pens at the gate, and no ceremonial route to the door. A meeting there is deniable in a way that a meeting at Buckingham Palace never is, because there is no colonnade, no balcony, and no photographer with a permit. That is what 47 Minutes bought. Contact happened. It simply arrived without restoration attached, and without a single frame anyone could circulate to suggest otherwise. But a father and a son can talk in a private garden without an audience. Somebody made sure there was one. The witness in the room. Queen Camilla was there. Bower's claim is that her presence was not incidental. She has been close to most of the events that damaged the relationship over the past several years, and having her in the room meant an independent person could confirm what was said and, more usefully, what was not. One royal author has described her role that day as protecting the king and ensuring the meeting unfolded with a witness present. Bower draws a hard conclusion from it. He reads it as evidence that Charles has stopped trusting his son, and he calls that a wise decision. Nobody outside that room has confirmed why she was there, including Bower. The king and queen host together constantly, and a daughter-in-law meeting her father-in-law's wife is not a deposition. The effect, though, does not depend on the motive. A witnessed conversation is a different conversation. It cannot be characterized freely afterwards by either side, because a fourth person knows the shape of it. Both parties knew that while they were speaking, and that changes what people are willing to say. Nobody makes the unguarded admission with a witness present. Nobody offers the concession they might want back. Nobody opens the grievance that would take 3 hours to unpack, because 3 hours were not on offer. If reconciliation between this father and this son was ever going to happen, it was unlikely to happen with a fourth chair occupied. Bower treats that as proof of design. It works just as well as an explanation for why the clock stopped at 47 minutes. 47 minutes is how long a difficult conversation lasts when nobody wants it to fail and nobody knows how to make it succeed. Then the room emptied, and the part that traveled furthest was the part that did not happen. The photograph that never came. The Duchess reportedly left Highgrove looking for confirmation that it had gone well. None arrived, no official photograph, no joint appearance, no image of the king with his grandchildren. nothing that could be circulated as proof of a thaw, and nothing that could later be repurposed as evidence of restored standing. For a household whose entire public existence now runs on images it controls, that absence is not a small one. It is worth being precise about the value at stake. A single photograph on the steps of Highgrove, king, duke, duchess, sunlight, no caption needed, would have traveled to every continent inside 20 minutes. It would have led broadcasts. It would have sat on magazine covers for a month. In commercial terms, it would have functioned as a reference, an implicit statement that the association still holds, and it would have carried an implication no palace statement could later walk back. Bauer's view is that the palace made certain no such picture existed. He also notes what else did not happen: no apology, no contrition for the previous 5 years, no restoration of privileges. There is an obvious defense available. The children are minors, and the family has fought publicly to keep them out of the press, so declining to photograph them is consistent with a position the Sussexes have taken themselves. But a photograph of the king and the duke alone would have carried no risk to any child, and it would have answered every question about the relationship in one frame. It did not appear. Neither did a line describing the meeting as warm, or constructive, or private and cordial, the standard formula available to any institution wanting to close a subject without saying anything at all. The palace chose to say nothing, and saying nothing is itself a position. Bauer's own position is considerably less restrained, and it is aimed at the king. What Bauer told the king to do next. His advice to Charles is to distance himself completely and make clear the Sussexes are not welcome. He argues the king and queen fought hard for the standing they now hold, that public sympathy currently sits with them, and that they will not risk that work. He adds that the Prince and Princess of Wales have no intention of permitting any rehabilitation, and he frames the episode as the royal family against the Sussexes, with the royal family, in his phrase, winning that day. Then he raises the grandchildren, and this is where the analysis stops being about strategy. His reading is that once the visit failed to produce a role, attention shifted toward the children as an emotional route back, that a grandfather not in his best health, a man who on the whole wants to see his grandchildren, could have wavered. Bauer believes that moment has now passed, and that the half-in, half-out dream is finished. Hold that against the absence in the previous chapter. Not one photograph exists of the king with those 2 children from that visit. He is in his late 70s, he has been treated for cancer while continuing to work, and the number of afternoons available to him is not unlimited. Whatever was being protected at Highgrove, it was protected at the cost of an image a grandfather might have wanted for reasons that have nothing to do with the monarchy at all. 47 minutes and no picture of the children with their grandfather. This is also the point where Bauer is plainly no longer describing events. He is instructing a monarch, and the instruction is exclusion. Cutting off a son publicly is a decision a father cannot reverse. Charles's actual behavior, allowing contact while withholding status, looks less like Bauer's recommendation and more like a man keeping a door on the latch, which is why those 47 minutes matter more than anything said inside them. Why it matters. Here is the honest ledger. Reported, a meeting occurred, Camilla was present, no photograph was released, no statement was issued, the accommodation offer was withdrawn, and a spokesperson confirmed it. The Duchess and children flew home ahead of the Duke. Bauer's interpretation, that the shortness was deliberate, that the finances forced the trip, that Camilla was a witness rather than a wife, that the palace suppressed any image, that the grandchildren became a route back, and that the king should now shut the door for good. Not one of those has been confirmed by anyone inside that house, and several rest on accounts and conversations Bauer has no access to. What is not in dispute is the outcome. The Sussexes traveled thousands of miles and came away with a private conversation and nothing they could show anyone. No security arrangement, no palace stay, no public appearance beside the king, no photograph. Bauer's reading of that is that the door has closed. The gentler reading is that it was never opened wide enough for either side to find out. If you want the follow-up as the Invictus Games in Birmingham approach, subscribe and turn on notifications. And tell us in the comments, was 47 minutes a deliberate message from King Charles, or an ordinary awkward family afternoon that everyone else has decided to read as strategy?